Big crypto is preparing for total crypto collapse. That's what Max Mayer thinks. At least that's what he's talking about in his video, where he goes into the details of what's going on with big crypto. Why does it look like, it does look like they're actually preparing for everything to just completely collapse. Should that worry you? Do you think that they know something that you don't? Well, it's actually quite interesting because something else is going on that most people aren't aware of. And if you take a few minutes to go through this with me, we'll help explore that and find out what's really going on. Is it really going to collapse, or is this all something else that's just misunderstood? Let's find out.
Something strange is happening in crypto. Sure, the market's shrinking, prices are plunging, and major players are blowing up. But I've started to wonder if there's something more we don't understand. I feel like we've kind of hit a bottom in the market, yet every week another company is laying.
That imagery that we just saw was a picture of Spider-Man trying to save his girlfriend, and she actually died in that scene. And that wasn't the bottom, that was her dying. I don't know why he would use that image. That's just horrifying. Anyways, let's keep going.
Off even more people. What's going on here? Do these companies know something we don't? And what do these mass layoffs say about the health of the industry and the future of crypto? I needed
mass
to find
layoffs.
out. The losses in the last year in profits, jobs, and whole companies are reason enough to ask the question: is this the cryptocalypse?
That's a great term. Good question. I guess we're going to find out. I think that it's interesting that he's actually getting into the fact that people are getting laid off is the thing that's freaking everybody out. So let's get into what that looks like.
Like, is this the absolute end of crypto forever and ever?
Forever.
No. Not even close. But things are chilly out there. Since its peak last November, crypto has lost 70% of its total market value. Fluctuations over that time are in the trillions.
Yeah, not that bad. It's only trillions. I think it's interesting that he decided to use footage of the moon landing. Is that what that is? Strange. Very strange. Especially an event that never happened. Let's keep going.
With conditions this bad, a few companies have already gone the way of the splendid poisoned frog. You've heard the saying, desperate times call for desperate measures. Well, for a lot of businesses out there, both in crypto and traditional markets, these are desperate times, which is why we're seeing so many companies taking such desperate measures, like laying off 20, 30, even 50% of their entire workforce. When it looks like we're entering into a potentially years-long bear market, even companies like Crypto.com are scaling back to the bare minimum, pun intended, in order to survive the long winter. But as the great 7 of 9 once said,
survival is insufficient.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe he just used a Next Generation reference. That is a really throwback. I haven't seen 7 and 9 in decades. That's pretty cool. Yeah, so I just had to say that because I haven't seen a reference to Next Generation Star Trek in a really long time. So that was weird.
So besides just muddling through this, what's actually the secret to coming out on top? And again, what do these crypto companies know that we don't know? The first thing we need to do is look at who's really responsible for taking us to the bottom and the behavior that got us there. After the utter ruckus of 2020, which saw mistrust in traditional governments, people from across the political spectrum again became more open to the idea that, hey, maybe there's something to this Bitcoin I've been hearing about. Also, a lot of people were just kind of at home in front of their computers, where crypto comes from, looking for something interesting to click on. Maybe it was institutional mistrust, maybe it was boredom, or maybe there were just a lot of people who finally had the time to actually research what a Bitcoin is. But whatever the reasons were, a lot of people bought in, and crypto started to gain acceptance as a legitimate currency.
So he's talking about how everybody just had lots of time, and maybe this, maybe that, about why Bitcoin. I guess when the fact is, though, at the exact same time, we had a complete collapse of the economy and nobody was working. So yeah, maybe they had more time to look at it, but I think that it was a much bigger issue than just that. I don't think it was just people like, maybe this Bitcoin thing. I think a lot of people were seeing I think there were more people that saw the truth about what's going on with the financial system than I think we let on. I think there's a lot more people out there that just don't talk about it and they realize what's going on. and they knew they had to make a move into something. And that's when they started to get into Bitcoin, because everything else was just wrecked. And the fact is that they can't trust these institutions anymore. So yeah, he tries to touch on a number of factors that are fairly commonplace. I think that there's this swelling, growing interest in this new system than more people want to admit. It's kind of like if you say anything about Bitcoin now to somebody who's like a normie, you're considered like a conspiracy theorist or something crazy like that to even think about some kind of alternative, right? And I think a lot of people don't want to have that kind of stigma. They just kind of like to quietly be able to make this move, and hopefully it's going to pay off, because they don't want to look like an idiot when things go down, which is what happens to everybody who openly expresses and says, hey, I'm a Bitcoin. So every time it goes down, they come to us like, oh, you poor thing, you've lost 70% and everything else. Nobody wants to go through that. And so when new people are into the space, they hate that. And so they just quietly accumulate some Bitcoin. I think that's happening on a much larger scale than most people appreciate. And I think that it's going to continue. Now, while things look like they might be improving a little bit, what we're seeing in the economy right now is not just a recession, but moving towards a depression. And when we get into that state, I think people are going to just be open about having Bitcoin, because like if you have anything else, it's going to be like garbage. So watch for it. Just watch how the tables can turn really, really quick. Don't be so focused in the way things are today, because tomorrow it could change on a dime. So those are my thoughts on that. So let's keep going.
As a potential solution to global and local problems. And as a result, prices skyrocketed across the market. And to be clear, it's not really the public's fault that there was a bubble. Bubbles don't occur just as a result of mass public interest. Sure, that does help, but I tend to think it's more about what a few bad actors, not that guy, more like these
He's
guys,
not that bad.
did with
Oh,
all
they are
that
bad.
interest, behaving recklessly, believing their own hype, and cutting corners on risk assessment. Many companies believe this sudden expansion was simply here to stay. They took out massive loans, bought even more cryptocurrencies, and expanded their operations, aggressively hiring tons of new staff. Classic bubble behavior. So when all shit popped, not in the good way, these companies couldn't pay the loans, the rent, or the people that they hired. So they took the public hype and they seized it. And when things came crashing down, the first thing to go are those extra people they hired.
Exactly.
Why is that the case? And why does it keep happening even though the markets have been relatively flat in the past few months? We need to look at how big this problem is. And I quickly found out it ain't easy to pin down an exact number of how many people have been laid off.
That's right. Here you go. Now you're getting some truth.
I'm looking at you, Crypto.com, have apparently been underreporting how many.
Okay, right there. He's giving you some truth right now. So Crypto.com has been actually underreporting the amount of people that they've been laying off. They've been laying off way more, like 5x more, 500% more than what they're claiming has been what's been happening. That is disturbing, because it would look like that's cryptopocalypse, like he talked about. Everything's ending. But he gets into the reason why they do that. So what they're doing is they're trying to do it very quietly, because they don't want to make it look like they're collapsing. But at the same time, he's going to get into it now, I think, where they're going to talk about the reporting of the numbers and how the numbers look after a lot of people are let go. Let's keep watching. But he just gave you some truth here. He went below the surface of the 260 they claimed. It's actually in the thousands. So that's much credit to Max for bringing that to our attention. Thank you.
How many people they've axed. But a fair estimate is that across the industry, at least 3,500 people have lost their jobs from big crypto companies. But why are companies doing this now? Well, actually, there's a lot of reasons that companies lay off employees. But in cases like this, it usually has to do with quarterly reports.
Quarterly reports. That's right.
Financial statements like balance sheets, income statements, and cash flow statements issued by companies every quarter. This isn't just something companies do for fun. Publicly traded companies are required to file their reports with the SEC. but any company with investors is going to have some kind of quarterly report.
That's right.
Which is every single big crypto company.
Oh yeah.
And beyond these financials, they typically contain an important set of data called key performance indicators.
KPIs, that's
These are
right.
meant to clearly show that the company is meeting its goals and is likely to deliver long-term profits to its investors.
Exactly.
See,
Long-term
quarterly
profits, it's
reports
all
give
about.
a snapshot of what's happening now in the company, but their real purpose is to inspire projections. Projections that they'll be profitable in the future.
Yes.
That way, investors are kept happy and their money is kept in the companies. So when KPIs are less than promising, the company's management has some explaining to do to all these investors. And when a company is struggling to make a profit, like in a bear market, they need...
Why did he use that image of a father on the bathroom floor with his son to describe the bear market? That's disturbing. But what he's talking about is absolutely true. This is spot on. Good stuff, Max. He's letting you know what goes on. I used to be, I was the founder of a publicly traded company. I understand the requirements when it comes to the reporting with the financials and everything else. It is a lot of, there's a lot of pressure from shareholders in order to make sure that every single quarter your numbers go up, your numbers go up, your numbers go up. And to do that, if a company isn't in a good position at a particular time, well, they gotta make a presentation, they gotta show those numbers so they could do things like letting go a whole bunch of employees. And the reason they would do that is because it's the easiest and the quickest thing to do for being able to turn around the numbers really, really quick. And this happens more than people would like to acknowledge it. But the fact is that this is all about driving profits for shareholders and about corporate governance. So that's what this really comes down to. Let's look a little more into this.
something to point to and say, hey, at least this thing is good. And typically that means quickly cutting costs now in order to show that they'll make more money in the future.
Exactly.
And when they need to cut costs in a hurry, a go-to move is to just let a bunch of people go because it immediately reduces their operating costs.
Exactly.
This can be a huge, mega huge chunk of change.
Huge.
CoinFlex, they're a derivative platform, said that the reason they laid off so many workers is that it'll actually cut costs by 50 to 60%. But what about all the non-human assets? Why not sell those first? Again, the key here is speed. It takes time
That's
to
just what I
move
said.
into cheaper offices. It takes time to get out of a lease. It takes time to sell assets like
all that
stock,
stuff
real estate, or even
just takes too
office
long.
furniture. And at the end of the day, like literally at the end of the day, it only takes about 5 seconds to hand someone a cardboard box and a severance check.
You're all fired. All four are fired.
What about the severance check? If the point is to cut costs, but they're still paying people, how does that add up? When it comes to quarterly reports, severance pay is considered a non-operating expense, which means it doesn't have any impact on the company's quarterly net income. Remember, this is all about projections and the look of the company. It's not about what they have so much as what they're going to have. And since severance is typically paid immediately, it's not a part of the company's ongoing expenses.
That's right.
And therefore, it can be left out of future cost projections.
So what he's talking about right now is basically an accounting trick. Which is, again, another common thing that happens in corporations. I think it's interesting that the severance and things like that are not counted into the quarter because, yes, he's right. That would be a huge chunk if it was actually included. I'm wondering if that's going to change as we start to adopt blockchain. Is that going to be something that a rule that, like, that's been a rule of accounting, but is that going to change? Like when we have blockchain where everything is everything is recorded to the chain and it doesn't matter what it's for, it's a transaction is a transaction. I don't know if that's going to change or not because these are rules that have been written for a long time for various reasons. Why this one? I'm not sure. Maybe because of new technology, this is going to change now. Maybe severance gets included in these things and the corporations can no longer pull this little trick to shore up their balance sheets and make them look better for the next quarter. Maybe. I think it could use improvement. Like I don't see why we would continue this practice because it seems honestly quite inhumane. Obviously, the people who are getting hurt the most are the people who are working, and it's all for the sake of satisfying some shareholders for a good report. Like, if that's the value of the people, that they just have this good report, I just don't think that that's a good company in general. I don't think we should be endorsing that kind of a culture. That's just me personally, though. But I believe that things are changing in a sense that more and more people are becoming less tolerant of this type of practice, this kind of idea that, hey, we just need to fire a bunch of people to be able to make ourselves look good, is what's happening here. And this is happening across crypto. This is happening in the space that is supposed to be all about transparency and all about being able to change the way things go in the future. So clearly, there's still a lot more things that need changing, given what we see happening with these crypto companies. Yeah, those are my thoughts on that. Let me know in the comments if you agree. Do you think that this practice of firing a bunch of people and then being able to carry over the severance so you could trick your quarterly reports is something that should continue as we adopt blockchain? Or do you think that this is something that should go away? This is basically an arcane kind of like manipulation of the facts, and it's just left over from the old systems, and it needs to go bye-bye because it is not helpful to growing society in a good way. Let me know. Anyways, let's keep going.
Why corporations make a distinction between being fired and being laid off. People are fired because their company wants them out of the office, but people are laid off because their company needs them off the books. You would think that laying off employees would be the last resort in bad times, but the sad truth here is it's often the easiest way to make your company look better to investors. As desperate as that sounds, it actually presents a unique opportunity for companies to establish themselves as one of crypto's foundational brands. You can't buy legacy, you earn it. And the way you do this is by surviving periods of sustained crisis, gaining invaluable experience, and building a reputation as a resilient
creating
brand
fires
that
and
will last
invaluable
for years to
experience.
come. This is exactly what investors want. So as short-term a solution as layoffs might be, if it means lasting long enough to become crypto's Ford, Chase, or Amazon, what's the loss of a few workers compared to becoming a permanent brand? Remember, while more than half of all .com companies didn't survive the early 2000s bubble burst, even the ones that did survive struggled, including Amazon, which lost more than 90% of its value. But by keeping it together and doing what's necessary to still be around when times are good again, Amazon is now worth more than the entire crypto industry. Okay, so what's next? This is the question every investor and crypto company is asking themselves right now. How do we make it to the part when things are good again? And the answer isn't exactly sexy, because now's the time for companies to focus on tight budgets and to more or less wait out the storm as it corrects through a phase called consolidation. This means that even though prices can be erratic, over time they simmer down and stabilize to a somewhat predictable range. See, after periods of boom and bust, it usually takes some time for a market to adjust. And by market, I mean people. We're kind of like a cat who jumps up on a hot stove. They're not going to do that again next week. But how about 6 months from now? Maybe they'll test it out. And when they don't get burned, they'll do it again and again.
So he's talking about people and then showing images of Mr. Bean and then American Psycho. Like, what are you trying to say here, Max? That's a very strange mixed message. They're stupid and they're crazy, is what he's saying. Oh no. And now we have a lion eating a dead chicken. Okay, let's keep going.
To eat your rotisserie chicken off the countertop. So over the roughly 6 months of the 2017 crypto boom and the 18 bust, Bitcoin prices stormed up and down with a low of around $6,000 and high around $19,000. Then over the next 6 months, though prices continue to fluctuate, they did so in a much more tranquil range between $6,000 and $9,500. That's consolidation. After that, prices remained relatively stable until everything blew up in 2020. We were cats fearlessly stealing rotisserie. We felt like geniuses until the stove was left on again, and Bitcoin dropped in value by $45,000. But while it feels bad, the price it's dropped to is around $20,000. That's higher than Bitcoin's value in its entire history before 2020. In the last 2 months, through a steady onslaught of bad news about layoffs, fraud, and bankruptcy, as well as some periodic good news, Bitcoin actually held its price for the most part. Now here's the thing, we unfortunately need more time. Our paws are still burned, and this isn't a long enough time period to say for sure that we've entered into a consolidation phase. But whatever the future holds, there are signs that plenty of companies are going to weather this storm. Crypto isn't going anywhere. Just recently, CoinFund announced a $300 million
crypto isn't going anywhere. But I think the crypto companies might be going somewhere. As we're getting into a space where there is more and more regulation coming down in the pipeline, I think that these crypto companies are going to find it more and more difficult to operate the same way as the traditional financial system, because the traditional regulatory system is trying to come down into crypto. And the reason why these companies have been able to perform the way they have is only because of the lack of regulation that has existed. But the fact is that the way that they even operate and how they use crypto now is sort of a stopgap measure. It's not long term. Do you know what I mean? Like it's basically because we don't have a closed loop yet. Once we move to a closed loop system where it's just crypto, these companies he's talking about now, the ones that are getting the hundreds of millions of dollars now, are going bye-bye. Like there's no reason for them to exist anymore. And guess what? There's no government or any other kind of agency that's going to be able to take your keys. So the power, the centralized power to be able to affect this is gone. It's now with the people, which is kind of what the whole point of crypto was in the beginning. The bottom line is that crypto isn't going anywhere. He is correct. These companies he's talking about, though, that he thinks is evidence that, oh, there's more money that's going into investing into these crypto companies and therefore crypto is going to continue, that is kind of a straw man argument, because the power of crypto is the people and the people behind using this technology. And we need to focus more on each one of us having opportunities and finding ways to incorporate it into our lives. Because just like you talk about how your money that you use and your spending power is your vote on what kind of value, on what kind of quality products you're going to get. Remember that time when like the whole organic thing came out and it's like you choose regular products, you choose organic. You should be buying organic because that's you voting for organic. And so then there'll be more organic. The same holds true with crypto. The same holds true with your money, right? The more that you vote with using crypto and actually moving your value into crypto, the more that is your vote for a more free future. Not just for you, but for your children and your grandchildren and the future in general for all humanity. So, is crypto going to go and collapse entirely? Absolutely not. It is just a simple accounting trick. Let me know in the comments if you think that is a good idea or not. I hope you can join us in the next one because that's going to be awesome too. Love to be able to have you join us on these reaction videos. Have a great day.